He left me because I couldn't give him a child, but it turns out he never could either. And the worst part? He always knew. My name is Grace, I'm 38 years old, and this is the story of how the man I trusted most made me believe I was broken, just to cover his own shame. Ethan and I met at a friend's backyard barbecue in Baltimore. He was tall, charming in that boyish way, and had this calm confidence that made you feel like everything would be okay, even when it wouldn't. I was 27 then. He was 32. We fell fast and hard. Marriage followed a year later. And then the question started. When are you having kids? You're not getting any younger, Grace. Still no good news? I hated those questions. At first, we laughed them off together. In time, Ethan would say, squeezing my hand. But that warm smile eventually faded. And in its place, I saw impatience, frustration, blame. By our 5th year, it wasn't just pressure from the outside. Ethan had become cold, clinical. Sex became a chore. Ovulation calendars. Temperature tracking. Even those awkward fertility tests. When the results came back as inconclusive, my heart sank, but his attitude froze. We both got tested, I reminded him. But he just shrugged. It's probably you. My side of the family has no issues. That sentence stuck to my ribs like ice. His mother, Evelyn, didn't help. She'd drop comments like, some women just aren't built to carry. I pretended I didn't hear. I pretended a lot of things. Looking back now, I can't believe how small I let myself become just to be enough for him. I stopped going to baby showers. I avoided family gatherings. I deleted the pregnancy tracker app on my phone. I cried a lot. In the bathroom. In my car. In bed while he snored next to me. Have you ever felt that kind of silent grief? The kind that no one sees because technically nothing's wrong? That's the worst kind. The kind that eats you quietly, day after day. Ethan started coming home later. Said he was working extra hours. I believed him because believing the alternative was too painful. But even then, something inside me was cracking. Like glass under slow pressure. And then, one evening, he said it. Grace, I think we should separate. I can't keep living like this. Like this? As in with me? I didn't even fight. I was too tired. Too hollow. He left the next day with just a duffel bag and his toothbrush. And just like that, 10 years of marriage ended with a muttered excuse and a slammed door. But I had no idea the real betrayal hadn't even begun yet. I didn't get out of bed for 2 days. The apartment felt haunted not by Ethan, but by all the versions of me I had been inside this space. Hopeful, excited, desperate, heartbroken. All of them still there, watching me from the corners. I deleted our shared calendar. Took down our wedding photo from the hallway. But I left his toothbrush in the cup by the sink. Don't ask me why. On the 3rd morning, I forced myself out for coffee. I went to this tiny place near my apartment, Hazel and Pine, my favorite. The barista, Mia, looked at me and said, rough week. I just nodded. I sat by the window, watching people rush by, headphones in, holding lattes like shields. And I thought, how are they all still moving? Don't they know my world collapsed? That's when I saw him. Ethan. Walking on the other side of the street. Laughing. With a woman. She was tall, blonde, probably a little younger than me. Wearing a pale blue coat, the exact color I'd picked out for mine last Christmas. My stomach twisted. I wanted to believe it was a cousin, a coworker, someone innocent. But something about the way he looked at her, that light in his eyes, it hadn't been there with me for a long time. I went home shaking. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat in the kitchen, staring at the clock. 1 hour. Then 2. Then 4. Eventually, I picked up the phone and called Rachel, my oldest friend, the one who knows everything. He left me for someone else, I said flatly. You don't know that, she said gently. I do. And I did. What would you have done in my place? Would you have confronted him? Followed him? Or tried to move on quietly? Because I didn't do any of those things. I called my gynecologist. Yep. You read that right. I asked to go over my test results again, the fertility ones. I don't know why. Maybe part of me just wanted closure, or maybe I wanted to punish myself a little more. Blame myself again, just like he did. But what I got was something else entirely. Grace, Dr. Lin said, flipping through my file. This is odd. We recommended couple testing, but we never received any records from Ethan's side. What? I blinked. She looked up. We have everything from you. Blood work, ultrasounds, hormone levels. But nothing from him. But he said you told him his results were fine. She frowned. Grace, I've never spoken to him. And without his data, we couldn't draw any conclusion about your compatibility. It hit me like a train. He never got tested. He never even tried. All this time, all this pain, all those comments about me being the problem. And he knew. He always knew. He let me carry the shame alone. I don't remember walking home from the clinic. All I know is, one moment I was sitting there, listening to Dr. Lin's voice echo in my head, and the next, I was in my living room, sitting on the rug, holding a glass of water I didn't remember pouring. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to set it down. I stared at the floor. The same old scratch in the wood where Ethan dropped the bookshelf when we moved in. I used to think of it as a memory we shared. Now it looked like a scar. One that never healed right. He lied to me. For years. He let me believe I was broken. That my body was the reason we couldn't have a child. He used my deepest vulnerability as a shield for his own cowardice. God, how could he do that? I picked up my phone. My fingers hovered over his name. Then I closed my eyes and pressed call. He answered on the second ring. Hey. Just that. Like nothing had happened. Ethan, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, why didn't you ever get tested? There was a pause. A long one. Then he sighed. Grace, not this again. Don't lie to me. I just came from Dr. Lin. She never saw your results. She never even spoke to you. More silence. You let me go through all of it alone. You let me believe it was me. His voice was flat. You were obsessed. You made everything about getting pregnant. I didn't want to be poked and prodded. I didn't think it would help. I almost dropped the phone. You didn't think it would help? I whispered. So you let me take hormones, get injections, cry myself to sleep every night while you what? Just waited for me to give up. I didn't ask you to do all that, he said. You pushed it. You wanted a baby, not me. And that broke something inside me. Because it wasn't just about the baby. It never was. It was about us. About building a life, about trusting each other. About not feeling like I was always reaching for something he had already let go of. I hung up. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I sat there numb. Hollowed out. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the couch with the TV on low. Some old rom-com I'd seen a dozen times. But this time, it made me angry. Angry at the lies we feed women about love, about sacrifice, about holding everything together no matter what. At around 3 a.m., I opened my laptop. I typed, how to find out if your husband is seeing someone else. Pathetic, right? But I needed the truth. I went down a rabbit hole, Google searches, social media, reverse image lookups. I remembered the woman he was walking with. The blue coat. I knew I'd seen her before. I scrolled through his tagged photos. Nothing. Then I checked his sister's page. Bingo. A post from a party 6 months ago. Ethan smiling next to the same woman. His hand on her waist. The caption read, so happy for these two. You deserve all the happiness in the world. 6 months. He had been cheating on me for 6 months at least. And everyone knew but me. Have you ever had that moment? That cold, still second where everything just stops? Where you realize you've been the only one playing by the rules. Tell me in the comments, would you have confronted him then? Or walked away? Because I didn't do either. Not yet. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind looping through every moment from the past year. The canceled date nights. The sudden business trips. The coldness in his voice when I'd ask, are you okay? And he'd just mutter, I'm fine. How did I not see it? The next morning, I did something strange. I got dressed. Not in pajamas or sweats. I put on my favorite dark jeans, a soft black sweater, and even added mascara. It wasn't for anyone else. It was for me. I needed to feel like I still existed. I walked to the park near my apartment. It was chilly, and the leaves were just starting to turn. I sat on a bench with a coffee from a little cart called Bean and Bloom. They always make it strong. The barista even smiled and added cinnamon on top, just because. That tiny moment? It mattered. I took out my phone. I still had Ethan's sister's post open. Her big, overdone caption echoing in my head. You deserve all the happiness in the world. Did I not? I clicked on the woman's profile. Her name was Kayla. Of course it was. She had perfect eyebrows and worked at some tech startup. Her page was filled with curated photos, rooftop brunches, sun-kissed selfies, and inspirational quotes in loopy cursive. I shouldn't have looked. But I couldn't stop. I went back months. She had a photo of Ethan's dog. Our dog. Or his now, I guess. She had met his family. She had spent holidays with them. And this whole time, he'd been coming home to me, pretending like I was crazy for feeling something was wrong. The betrayal ran deeper than I'd thought. Not just the cheating, but the fact that he had rewritten our story behind my back and handed my role to someone else. And here's the worst part. I started to question if I had been too much. Too emotional. Too hopeful. Too attached. Have you ever done that? Have you ever been wronged so badly and still wondered if maybe you were the problem? It's a cruel trick. Especially when it's someone you loved, someone who knew exactly where your insecurities lived, and used them like weapons. I walked for hours that day. Through the park, down back streets, past old bookstores, and tiny diners. At one point, I stopped in front of a shop window and caught my reflection. I looked older. Not in a bad way. Just tired. Like someone who had lived through a storm but was still standing. That night, I got home and saw Ethan had messaged me. We should talk. This is getting out of hand. I stared at the screen. Getting out of hand? As if I was the one losing control. As if I was the problem again. And suddenly, I felt a shift. It wasn't rage or grief. It was clarity. I realized I didn't want to talk. I didn't want closure. I didn't want explanations. I wanted my life back. I turned off my phone. I opened a bottle of red wine, the good kind I'd been saving for a special occasion. I put on Norah Jones and took a long bath. The first one in weeks. And I thought, maybe this is the beginning, not the end. The next few days felt strange. Not painful, just quiet. Like that moment after a storm when everything is still wet and broken, but there's sunlight coming through the clouds. I didn't reach out to Ethan. I didn't block him either. I just stopped caring enough to check. Instead, I started noticing things I'd ignored for years. Like the books on my shelf I never got around to reading. The dried lavender tucked behind the kitchen clock that had lost its scent. The chipped mug I used every morning, the one Ethan always told me to throw out. I kept it. I started writing again. Nothing big, just short journal entries, sometimes just a sentence or two. I wrote things like, "You're still here. This hurts, but it's not the end." He didn't take the best parts of me. I still have those. I found a rhythm in small rituals. Morning coffee on the fire escape. A 10-minute walk before logging into work. Lighting a candle in the evenings, not for mood, just to feel like I had control over something. One night, I ran into Ethan's friend Sam at the grocery store. We were both in line at checkout, me with oat milk and a frozen pizza, him with energy drinks and whatever was on sale. He looked awkward. I probably did too. "Hey," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "I, heard about everything." I nodded. "Yeah, it's been a ride." He hesitated, then added, "I just want to say none of us knew about Kayla." He kept it really quiet. I didn't know whether to believe him or not. Honestly, I didn't care anymore. But what he said next stuck with me. "You didn't deserve that," he said quietly. "You were the best thing in his life." I almost cried. Not because I missed Ethan, but because it had been so long since anyone said something kind to me without expecting anything in return. That night, I finally told my sister everything. We were sitting on the couch, eating Thai food straight from the cartons. She kept shaking her head and muttering, "God, what a loser." But then she said, "You know, I always thought you were too good to be just somebody's wife. You're your own person, Mia." And something clicked. For so long, I had built my world around him. His job. His moods. His choices. even his lies. And I had completely abandoned me. I looked around my apartment, messy, lived in, warm, and thought, this is mine. Every picture frame, every throw pillow, every single little thing. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt safe. But of course, healing isn't a straight line. The next morning, I got a message from Ethan's mom. Hi, sweetie, just checking in. Ethan told us you've been going through something. Hope you're okay. Going through something? I almost laughed. Leave it to him to rewrite the story again, this time, with himself as the concerned, supportive husband. I didn't reply. Instead, I took a deep breath, opened my calendar, and did something bold. I booked a solo weekend trip to Asheville. A little Airbnb cabin, mountains, no Wi-Fi. Just me. It felt terrifying. And also thrilling. I didn't tell anyone I was going away. Not my coworkers, not even my sister. Just packed a bag, left a note on the fridge, and went. The drive to Asheville took about 4 hours. I had a playlist going, mostly old stuff from college. Alanis Morissette, early Coldplay, that kind of thing. You know, the kind of music that makes you feel like you're both healing and breaking at the same time. The Airbnb was perfect. A small cabin with a porch swing and a view of the mountains. Inside, it smelled like cedarwood and fresh linens. There was a little fireplace, a teapot, and the kind of silence I hadn't heard in years. No notifications. No guilt. No pretending. Just me. I spent the first night crying. Not the loud, dramatic kind. Just quiet tears, the kind that sneak up on you when everything is finally still. I cried for the years I lost trying to be someone else's definition of enough. For all the times I silenced my instincts. For how small I let myself become in a relationship that was supposed to love me. The next morning, I made myself tea chamomile and sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket. The sun was rising over the trees, turning everything gold. It was beautiful in that almost painful way. That's when the first real thought came, like a whisper I had buried deep. You don't need him to be whole. And I sat with that, rolled it around in my mouth like a strange new word. I had spent so long chasing the version of me that existed in his eyes. I forgot that I had my own. I journaled a lot that weekend. One entry just said, start again. But this time, only for you. Another one said, you survived. I even made a list, things I love that have nothing to do with Ethan. Hot chocolate with cinnamon. Soft jazz on Sunday mornings. The smell of bookstores. Dancing alone in the kitchen. That feeling after finishing a good book. Have you ever done that? Stopped and asked yourself, who am I without all the noise? I think we forget sometimes. Especially as women, we shapeshift so much for others. For our kids, our partners, our parents, our bosses. But who are you when no one is watching? That question stayed with me long after I returned home. So let me ask you, have you ever looked in the mirror and realized the person looking back doesn't feel like you anymore? Have you ever had to rebuild not just your life, but your identity? Tell me in the comments. What would you have done if you found out your whole relationship was built on a lie? Because now I was starting to realize the lie wasn't just about the fake diagnosis. It was about everything. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. When I got back from the mountains, the house felt different. Not because anything had changed physically. Ethan's shoes were still by the door, the dishes were still in the sink, and the laundry was still where I'd left it. But I had changed. I walked through the front door and felt, for the first time, that this space no longer controlled me. Ethan was sitting on the couch, pretending to read. He looked up, surprised to see me a day early. He asked, back so soon, with that smug smile, like I was some fragile bird who needed his cage to feel safe. But I didn't answer. I just nodded, hung up my coat, and went upstairs. That night, I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't explain. I simply told him, I know the truth, Ethan. About everything. His face dropped. He stammered, something about stress, about how he thought he had symptoms, how it wasn't really lying if he believed it could be real. You know what's funny? I didn't even care about the explanation. Because in that moment, all I could think was, he needed me to believe I was crazy. Because he couldn't stand the fact that I was stronger than he was. I went to bed that night and slept like a rock. No racing thoughts. No fear. Just the steady rhythm of my own breathing. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I'd already done the research during my time away, looked into separation laws, community property, spousal gaslighting. I knew what I was entitled to. I knew I had ground to stand on. I wasn't rushing into anything, but I was no longer afraid of what came next. At work, I started opening up more. Not about Ethan, not yet, but about my story. About resilience. I gave a presentation on mental wellness in the workplace, and when I finished, one of the interns came up to me and whispered, "You have no idea how much I needed to hear that today." That meant something. I started rebuilding myself quietly. Not with big, dramatic gestures, but with little things. I changed the wallpaper on my phone. I bought myself fresh flowers from Trader Joe's every Friday. I went for long walks without my phone. I played my old favorite movies at night, the ones Ethan hated. I laughed more with coworkers. I stopped explaining myself so much. It was like I had slowly opened a window inside me, and finally, I could breathe again. Was it still hard? Yes. Sometimes, I'd catch myself doubting everything again. I'd hear his voice in my head saying, "You're overreacting. You're too sensitive. You're the problem." But then I'd hear my own voice, louder this time, saying, "You were never the problem. You were just never allowed to be whole." And that voice, my voice, was getting stronger. So, if you've ever stood in your kitchen holding a mug of cold coffee, wondering how your life ended up here, if you've ever questioned your own reality because someone you trusted made you feel crazy, I want you to know, you are not alone. And you are not broken. You're just waking up. It's strange, isn't it? How something that was once your whole world can suddenly become just a chapter. A chapter you survived. I wish I could say there was a big dramatic ending, that Ethan packed his bags in a storm of guilt, or that I had some triumphant speech as he walked out the door. But life doesn't usually work that way. In reality, it was quiet. I served him the divorce papers over breakfast one morning. He looked at them, blinked, said nothing, and then he just stood up, grabbed his keys, and left the house. No yelling, no drama, just the end of a very long lie. I sat there for a long time afterward, staring at my untouched coffee, and let the silence settle in. But it wasn't the heavy silence of confusion or fear anymore. It was peace. The kind of peace that comes not from someone else's permission, but from your own decision to finally choose yourself. Since then, things haven't been perfect. But they've been mine. I moved into a smaller place, just me and my books, my music, my Sunday morning rituals. I painted the walls the soft green the first always wanted, the one Ethan said was too depressing. I joined a local book club. I took weekend trips alone. I started writing again, just little essays, bits of memory, scattered thoughts. Nothing fancy. Just my voice on the page. And you know what? The fog lifted. I didn't realize how much of myself I had dimmed to make him feel brighter. How many dreams I'd folded up like old clothes and stuffed into the back of my mind. But now, I was unfolding them, trying them on again. And some of them still fit. One night, I sat at my desk and wrote a letter to myself, the version of me who once believed she was broken. I told her, "You are not losing your mind. You are losing the lie. Keep going." And I still read that letter, some nights. Not because I'm scared again, but because I want to remember how far I've come. I'm not angry anymore. Not at Ethan. Not even at myself. I'm just free. If you've walked through your own storms and came out stronger, or if you're still fighting, you're not alone. Subscribe to hear more stories from women like us. Women who refuse to stay down.